Meta little mini episode. Basically, I want to discuss the zero or the free cards. If you go into your filters, you'll see right here as I'm moving around, beneath gold is free. I have that highlighted. There are 63 available zero cost cards, and I just want to kind of cover why you might use them, why you might see them, and we're talking constructed. Obviously, in limited, that's just what you have access to. Starting with Bodyguard, the only time I've really seen this is in a Kark deck because it comes down with Ambush, it blocks, and it comes back to block over and over and over again. Basically, as long as they don't remove your discard pile, you can just keep blocking non-breakthrough bodies all day. Brand, Rebel Fighter, you might have seen it in the Kark list I used by Atlanta. That's... I'm trying to think if there's another time I've seen one of these outside of Limited. I don't think there is. But obviously for the Kark deck, again, it's because it's zero and it gains 5 life as well as puts down a blocker, possibly even something that kills a small token, so it's pretty good. Brave Squire, I have only seen this in Limited. Well, because there's a couple things going against it. Okay, you can give target champion +5 attack and unbreakable, and you make a human. Cool. Is that really worth a slot? Well, there's a lot to set up there, and I don't really think that, it has a place currently. Courageous Soul, I've seen this in token builds, because obviously you put it in at the end of their turn, which is almost like giving it Blitz. I'm using the word almost, and then it goes on in basically usually getting itself killed as either the first attacker or as part of the first wave to give your entire team +2/+0. It's alright. It's mostly for token builds that go wide. Faithful Pegasus, I'm trying to think if I've seen this. I can't remember now if it was only in limited or other. It might have been in a human heavy build. You have two things. One, it's airborne, it's blitz, and it says a human champion can gain flying when this attacks or blocks, and it recycles, so it sort of replaces itself. Now, as far as the build that I'm talking about, I actually want to bring up Sage. Let's bring up the money one. Where is it? Here. That's a Sage construct. There we go. That's a human knight. The Knight of Alara is human, so it could become flying with them. You mostly be looking at either good or Sage. So say Gladius, who's a decent sized body. I'm trying to think. Zoe. Where is he? Master Zoe is a decent sized body, but if you want to say maybe Marcus, I've never seen Lord of Arena outside of the context of limited. Where were we? Faithful Pegasus. Paros, I have seen him a few times in Constructed. Again, this is a token build one. Other human champions get +1 attack. That means you probably want a human token heavy strategy. It comes in, brings a buddy with them. It's free. It makes more, but it only makes 1 on playing of a gold spell. There's no ambush. It's okay. Priest of Kalnor, I've seen them in Kark builds. I've seen them in Limited. That is the extent of them. Them coming in and gaining 4, okay. I like Brand a little bit better for that. Target champion gains Unbreakable Untargetable this turn. Okay, that they still can be blocked. Admittedly, you do this pre-combat, but whatever. I don't think it's worth the card, especially because it doesn't recycle. Priest Evangeline, Kark again, and wow, amazing how all these good cards have been Kark. Big one is that obviously you pay any further gold good cards. That's alliteration to gain 3 life. It does have recycle, so it is playable. Rally the People. I've seen this okay in token builds. I'm not really in love with it. It has recall, which is 1, and it says all your champions. So if you have a multi-faction build, or if you're making multiple kinds of tokens, whether it be wolves, demons, whatever, it gives your whole team +1 attack, and it has recall. So it's okay, but it's, to me, that feels like more of a win more card for 0. Rescue Griffin. I've seen him. I'm going to say again, Kark. Sage Good is okay with this because it's one of the biggest ambush airborns. It can block 6 power in the air, which means like Angel of Death and stuff like that. It can block a Medusa. It blocks a lot of your mid-range level attackers. Revolt, I've seen this strictly in tokens. However, it's pretty good in tokens. All your good champions get +2 attack. The fact that the token has Blitz, so that kind of adds to it. The fact that it has a draw 2 on there as well, meaning the card's never dead. So I mean, obviously, it's good for a final push. And I mean, if you see some of, let's bring them up real quick. these go wide token ones. It's not Kirk. Where is it? Stuff like martial law puts in 5 tokens. The standard bearer comes in with 2 tokens plus itself. Insurgency right there. So if you put in 4 humans that are coming in as 2 1s and blitz and unbreakable, give them an additional +2 on top, they're 4 1s coming in for 2 cards. So I mean, like, that's not anything to slouch at. It'll take you out. Second wind, I play in a few decks. I think anything that just needs, that's already running enough good cards, will run 2 to 3 of these, just because it's a recycle and 5 extra health. And how many times these things come down to races, you get caught off guard by a Wild Sage deck, you get caught off guard by an Army of the Apocalypse deck that, you know, is doing its first push. Mind you, its final push is going to kill you, but its first push just to live through pre-Army of the Apocalypse. Watchful Gargoyle, this one's okay. It's not the worst. You saw some of these other ones that are giving big pumps to all the good, but also this is a 0, and that matters. Let's bring it up again. Where is it? Justice Prevails. There we go. Justice Prevails. All your 0s get righteous and +3/+3. So, I mean, like, that's a pretty, you know, getting a 5/6 flying righteous out of the deal, that's not the worst if your deck's based around, you know, Justice Prevail being one of your big overrun cards. Let's go back to free. White Dragon. I actually do see this from time to time. There are these dragon-based mid-range decks with Thundarus, and if you're running Thundarus, you're obviously going to run this. A 5/5 airborne that recycles if you played another one, so if it's the same turn you played Thundarus, it'll be a 10/10 with Thundarus, that's alright. Most of the good ones, you heard the word Kark and tokens. Those are mostly where you're going to see most of these 0 cost ones, and there's nothing wrong with that, but that's... And then we switch over to, say, evil. Consume the 3 damage, gain 3 health. I have that in my Kark build. I've usually, unless you're worried really about gaining the health, you'll play Wither or one of the other targeting ones that'll hit more and do more. Corpse Taker, you should see this enough. You're not going to see him as 3 ofs. You might see him as 1 of, might see him as 2 of. It brings back a 1 cost, so in the same turn, you can play this, get back the 1 cost you need, and play it, and, you know, get things going. And then it can sit around and bash a few cards from a discard pile targeted. It's not the best card, but it's not one where, you know, it's like, oh, if I only need 1 more card, I'll throw a Corpse Taker into a deck if I can allow it. Bringing back Angel of Death, you know, there are innumerable reasons why Corpse Taker fits in as a 1 or a 2 of. Corpse Monger, specific builds like this one, you have it actually has 2 factors going for it. One, it has Blitz, so these Army of the Apocalypse decks like them. Any of these Blitz heavy base decks. And 2, this is actually in that Kark build, that Atlanta one, because not only is it discard hate, but it's discard hate that gains life. So it works 2 ways. And a 4/3 still threatens. It does. Dark Knight, I really only see them in Army of the Apocalypse and those wild, evil, blitz heavy ones. I mean, because this thing does everything. It's a Swiss Army knife. It ambushes and 5 power, so it'll trade on their turn. On your turn, it has blitz. It's unbreakable on your turn, meaning you can play it and then use a board wipe that breaks and clear the way for a couple of these to come in. It's fun if you play these out, you go in, you attack, they're unbreakable, they deal some damage, whatever. You play something like, let's say, Reset, bring it back to your hand, replay it, send it back in another time, and that might be the finish. It's the same thing if these things get cleared out. That's why the Army of the Apocalypse decks like them so much. This is a card from the base set that really just keeps finding a home. Guilt Demon, very similar. The fact that it has Ambush, it can block in the air if it needs to, and with how many Wild Sage decks go up in the sky. The 3 power takes out an okay number of the Sage flyers. So I mean, don't expect this thing to trade up really. Blitz is always nice. When it comes in on, whenever it comes in, it takes out a card from discard pile, you play it on your turn, you end up taking out 2 cards because they can't play anything before you attack, so you'll end up with this thing in the attack, and take out 2 targeted discards for 0. More often than not, it ends up in decks that really want to both put down a zero cost threat, because 3 power is a zero cost threat. It's airborne, it's evasive, and it also still has discard hate in there. And then this one is very niche. Hands from below. You usually see this in the Xanos token heavy builds, and this is almost like mirror tech. Now, we're going to come back when we talk about Sage Ones. We're going to talk about Spike Trap. This one deals 4 damage to each attacking creature without airborne. That's all your tokens. Unassisted, it's all the tokens. It hits every token. It hits demons, it hits zombies, wolves, everything else. So you can save this up for a big blowout. It also, let's bring up Sage for a second, take away free. This guy, Night of the Shadows, I'm seeing this one more and more, and this is mid-March 2020. I'm seeing this one more and more, so I definitely would put that down as, hey, that card is able to take that out. I'm trying to see if there's anything else really. As far as Sage, here you go, it takes out Crystal Golem, because obviously they can't boost Crystal Golem. I don't think there's many others. Temporal Enforcer, I'm seeing that more and more. Those are most of the ones in Sage, and I know that seems very specific to hate on Sage. Sage is arguably the most played secondary color. It's not always the primary. It's usually secondary in Evil Sage, in Wild Sage. It's a second or third color in many of the multicolor decks, whether they're Xanos Evil Control, or just Evil Control without Xanos. If it's a Kark deck, stuff like that. So it's something to keep in mind. Let's keep trucking on. Page 2. Heinous Feast. If you are not running Sage, or if you've used up all your Sage slots, this is your backup to Amnesia. It'll get you a couple life. It can be used as a draw too. I usually use it as a backup. If I run 2 or 3 Amnesia, depending if I roll the Finnick, my Sage zero cost numbers, this will usually be a backup. That's most of what it's used for. Little Devil. I usually see this almost exclusively in the blitz heavy versions, whether it's Army of the Apocalypse or the wild evil designs. It's fine. It does its job. It's not anything really to write home about, but it's fine. Plentiful Dead. You will see this in many of the evil control lists, just because it keeps putting out an extra body, an extra blocker. And if you don't answer it, it will dominate a board in enough time. So it's a grindy card. Raxus Curse, anti-zero tech. We talk about the zero cost war. That's what this is there for. It's a zero cost card to fight zero cost creatures, and you get a demon out of it. And obviously, if there's not a lot of targets on their side, if they're just running a deck and they're not running a lot of zero cost champions, you can always draw 2 with it. Spawning Demon. I don't see this very often. I play it in my one 4-color list that I found that apparently I can't find a link for, but it's a threat. You have ambush and the fact that it sets you up. Right now, I do want to mention, again, I'm going to timestamp this, March 2020. The trigger is not a May. Now, you see these words. I can read these words. It says May. The game does not read it as a May. You always have to do it in the game. So just be aware of that. If you're running kind of low on life, you want to put this guy down, immediately block and trade out, because otherwise you're going to keep losing life points. Thrasher Demon, this is old tech. This is, from before the expansions. I saw this a little bit more. Usually in, the Unbreakable and Breaking Killing Wave sort of things. Usually in either Evil Sage or Evil Wild, where you're running very blitz-heavy strategies. It's fine. Unquenchable Thirst. Believe it or not, this is more tech the more the metagame really shifts. You have probably 3 main targets for this. So I want to point out that this is 1 damage plus whatever else you have in your yard. Let's a few of them are actually free, so I can actually point them out. None there. Force Mage. This one usually needs to die. If you see this one en masse, they're usually triggering it. They'll shave like 6 points off your life a turn. And yes, I understand a single one will do that. It can kill Muse with 1 more in the yard. Where else are we? I know you're in here. Possibly Fire Shaman. They're getting run a little bit more. Spore Beast. That one needs to die a few times. Actually, that's because it's not free. That's why. It's the Gudgeon. Where are we? There we are. And also this one. This is the one that tends to sneak in. It's in a lot more controlless or evil heavy decks. a zero answer, just killing these small ones. So it's mostly there to handle these what we would normally call utility creatures. They're small, threatening ones that just end up needing to go down a flight of stairs. But you do it for free, and that's part of the zero cost war. Wither. This used to be huge when Xanos lists were everywhere. Now that we're somewhere in flux, I can't recommend this enough. It kills a wave of zombies. It kills a wave of wolves. Even if the wolves are getting +1/+1, same thing with the zombies, it'll take them out. The fact that it shrinks the front end means in a pitch, you can use it to shrink down an attacker to keep it from dealing more damage as breakthrough, whatever. So it does a lot of things. And again, it's zero. It handles those. Oh, hey, first turn, you pass. Oh, I put down a muse. All right, I'm going to shoot it and not have to use my gold, or if I already did use my gold. Words of Summoning. This is more of a control card than anything else, mostly because it puts down a 4/4. It recycles, so it sort of draws a card back. I don't see this as a primary choice for anything but control, just because in aggro lists, they'd rather have Blitz, they'd rather have Guilt Demons, stuff like that. But for control lists that are more about events, recycling events, and stuff like that, this definitely has a home. Amnesia, probably the most, if not tied for the most popular of these zero cost spells. Banish target players, discard, recycle. That's it. If you see one of these paid for, if they're paying 1 gold to draw 2 cards, either they know you don't have a discard cycling issue, or they really need those cards, or they have a second one. So there's 3 options. Arcane Research. This is kind of techy. Every time I find a spot for this, either I'm playing a very event heavy deck, or a deck that cycles cards very quickly, or I just, I want one more card. I mean, because this is probably the deepest digging of the cards. This is as close as we come to a tutor, because you can banish rather, your entire discard pile. Now, mind you, you do reveal the top however many cards, and they know which one you take, but sometimes that doesn't matter. If you need to dig for that board web, if you need to dig for that combo piece, if you need to dig for that game-winning card, this is there. I see it, I mostly see it in just, 2-color decks. I like throwing it in, but compared to some of the other ones. Citadel Scholar, have not seen this outside of Limited, just because, okay, comes in recycle. It's just the body. Admittedly, it grows out of control, but with so many cards that destroy or deal with zero cost cards, this one doesn't do enough. Force Mage Apprentice. For the Sage heavy decks, there are a few Sage heavy decks. There are, a couple of lists that are floating around where wave 1 will be a ton of Sage bodies and events and everything else. Meanwhile, so this will get you expend it, deal 2 damage to a player or a champion, play your spell on, prepare this, deal another 2. If you do this on your turn and their turn, that's like almost 8 points a cycle off one of these. Usually they're, if you're seeing these, they're their own tech. They fight Gudgeon, they fight the Muse. Obviously, they fight each other, and they can go to a player's head. So there's definitely use for those. Frantic Digging, 2 lists: Army of the Apocalypse, because you're trying to put more champions in your yard, or just list or control lists that want to be drawing and not spending their gold. Those are the 2 lists that I see. Fumble, illegal and constructed. Don't even need to worry about it. Hasty Retreat. You actually will see this more and more in Hasty Sage decks, because, well, it's a zero cost answer. You can fight the gold battle where you don't want to spend your gold and you want them to spend their gold, and waiting for them to make the 1 gold play as I knock it away. So it's tech in its own right. Keeper of Secrets, usually run as a blitz card, but well, actually I shouldn't say that. I see it when it's used. It's usually utilized to its max. It's utilized in those Force Mage Apprentice decks. It's utilized in Blitz heavy decks. It's just used for everything. Muse, like when I said Amnesia could be tied, Muse is the second one I see the most of, because it's good. There aren't many solid draw engines, especially at 0, reliable draw engines. So this is one of the ones, it has to die. If your opponent keeps one resolved for 2 turns, you're behind the 8 ball. They're drawing way more cards than you. You will see a lot of wild cards coming up that where I'll just keep saying kills Muse, kills Muse, kills Muse. Unquenchable Thirst, that I'll bring that up. Kills Muse. Like, that's where you need to be at, is kills Muse. Ogre Mercenary, I don't actually think I've seen it constructed. Obviously, it does what it does, but as a 4/3, whatever. Shadow Imp, that would be the same Force Mage Apprentice and, Sage Heavy decks. They're a pain in the rear, but they both can block. They can go in for 2. You play your spell. They come back to your hand. If you want to, you can then play them again, go in for 2. But usually it's play them, go in for 2, play your Sage spell, bring them back to your hand, wait. So it's an extra 2 a turn that they can't interact with. Siren Song, a very tech card. This is a 0 way of handling zeros. There are 2 problems to it. 1, it says it has to be on your turn and you get it expended. Okay, that's not the worst. But 2, most of the time you need, if you're trying to just handle zeros, there are other ways to do that. This is like the 10th card in slots that are only made for 8 or 9 of these cards. That's the problem. It's like it's good, but there are other ones I'd rather have first. Spike Trap. This is the one I was referring to. This and where are we? Come on, words. This Enhance from Below Compete. Here's the big thing. This one hits airborne creatures and it recycles. So between the two, if I have to give a nod somewhere, I will say usually Spike Trap, just because, okay, I can get 2-tap zombies, or I can recycle, get a card, and also hit airborne. So this is usually my primary choice. I'm running this more right now as a meta call versus open decks. It really, I went down to 2 and I regretted it and went right back up to 3. Now, mind you, I'm talking versus an open field. I'm not talking about playing in arena and stuff like that. I'm talking just, new game and go. Vanishing. Yes, that was a big intake for that. When it shows up, it's usually abused. Bounce your own creatures, bounce their creatures. It's free. It can be used to draw 2 cards. It's simply good. That's no other way to say it. But you do have to play it on your turn, so you have to have a back and forth. You have to have a card. You have to have events or ambush stuff that goes on their turn, where you can still leave this open, for your turn. Warrior Golem. The only time I actually see these truly are the Army of the Apocalypse decks, and I'm sure at this point they're probably even outdated. But these were in some of the original lists before expansions. I like them, but at the same time, if I had to pick them, I have them in mind. As you can see, the deck tech that's up there. This is not the greatest because Army of the Apocalypse doesn't trigger loyalty, so you won't get the blitz off this when they come back. But, the fact that if they go into a discard pile from anywhere, meaning if someone makes you discard them, like with that Hand of the Shadow and everything else, or Thought Plucker, you still can get the recycle. So it's kind of anti-discard tech, kind of. Ankylosaurus, I only see them in wild heavy decks. It's a dinosaur. That's mostly it, is that it's a dinosaur. It's free. It has breakthrough, but you have to be really heavy in wild where you want to be gaining a card and increasing your board position every turn. Cave Troll, I don't think I've seen them in constructed. I can think of them. I love this guy in limited. I don't think I've seen him constructed. If you do, obviously it's a wild heavy deck, but it doesn't have evasion. It does have recursion, but shrug. 5/3. It dies to a lot of stuff. Feeding Frenzy. You see him here and there for breakthrough lists. For like if a Juggernaut goes slamming into a whatever, into like a Kark or something like that, you just pop them off and it can draw 2 cards. I wouldn't run 3, but running 1 or 2, I think I've run 1 in a list of mine. They're fine. It's actual removal. Fire Shaman. You will see them in the burn heavy versions of Wild Sage, and obviously it has to be more wild than Sage. As I click away from it, it is absolutely, it does a lot. It kills other zeros. It goes to their face. It does a lot. Fireball, I like it. 3 damage to a target. It can kill a lot of those, however many power, 3 defense flyers that, get in there. It can kill that Shadow Imp. So it can also fight the Zero War. And if need be, if you got nothing better to do, spend the 1 gold, sweep out their small team, and deal 3 to them. It does a lot. It's usually a second pick to one of these other ones I'll show you in a second. Flame Spike, it deals with Muse, can also go to the head. This and Wolf's Bite are definitely, I won't say interchangeable, but they fight for the same space. If you're going burn heavy, like you want to be able to hit them in the face and drop them quicker, if you want to have a grind your game better against Wild or even against Sage with their untargetables, because their untargetables don't have breakthrough, the Wolf's Bite will be better. If you just want to lower their life total faster, Flame Spike. Flash Fire. This is the one versus Fireball. It comes in. I use this all the time. I mean, you have to also notice that it hits you. So if you're trying to use this to kill one Muse, just be aware you're also dealing 2 to yourself. But it clears out those zombies. It clears out stuff after Wave of Transformation. That's pretty good. Can draw 2 cards if needed. Go Wild. Usually only in Wild heavy lists because it doesn't grant Breakthrough. It does recycle though. Lash. I love this card. Because of the recall, obviously. It can kill 1 defense creatures. I'm looking at the Gudgeon. I'm looking at the Apprentice. If you have it in hand already, it can kill 2 toughness because you play it, recall it, replay it. You can kill 2 toughness if you absolutely need to kill a Muse, but you are spending a gold to do it. One of the big plays, for me is I'll attack with 2 non-breakthrough creatures that I can target, and then I'll go Lash 1. If they don't do anything different, like they don't kill the other guy, recall, Lash again, and it'll get in there. And enough to run 3 only if I'm absolutely running a very wild heavy list that's just going for the jugular. It doesn't have any metagame context. It just wants to lower life totals. Lightning Strike, you see it a couple times. Here, notice it only hits a champion or draws 2 cards. I think it's mostly limited tech. If you like this, I have nothing against it, but it only hits champions. Rage, you will see this a bunch in these Wild Sage lists because it does give Breakthrough, and it can also be cycled for 2 cards. It's really good. This versus Lash, it depends on what you want. Depends if you want to be able to clear out those small guys. If not, Rage is, if you're not worried about using Lash offense and defense, if you just want offense, Rage is the better card. Spore Beast, you will see this in the Wild Sage lists. And obviously I keep saying that. It is the most popular archetype that I have seen. I'm using that phrasing, that I have seen. And in the published list for this era of cards, Wild Sage seems to be like the #1 list that shows up. This is in their list. The fact that it has Ambush, it can get Blitz, obviously is much better when it can gain Blitz. Removing those champions from combat, very, very, very important. Offensively and defensively. This, if I had to have a third, actually probably like a 4th or a 5th must-die target, Spore Beast is up there on must-die targets. I don't rate it as highly as I need to kill a Muse or a Gudgeon or a Force Mage Apprentice. This is probably like #4, maybe #5 on my list of things that need to die that are 0. Well, cheap rather. I really don't see this in Constructed. I love this card so much. I really do. Notice that it's when it leaves their discard pile, like Ancestral Ancient Chant, you'll get the Wolf regardless. +2/+2. Okay, you don't get the breakthrough that Lash does, but this one does give defensive. If you're running a tokens list, this is probably pretty good because you just pump whoever gets through, or you pump whoever needs it. If you need a Wolf to trade with a demon, that sort of stuff, and get your Wolf here and there. Wolf Spite. This one shows up a ton. This is one of the most popular free cards just because the number of time people splash 2 or 3 surprise attacks into a list that otherwise doesn't have wild, these 4-color quote-unquote controller mid-range decks. This is usually their free card. This is the one because it kills Muse, Gudgeon, ... You know the targets I'm putting in there, and then it puts out a blocker, it puts out a threat. If I kill your Muse and I put out a 2/2, and that was your only champion on board, I'm now forcing you to play a gold spell in theory to answer this. Worm Hatchling. I only see this from less seasoned players, and I'm not begrudging anyone who runs this. I'm just saying I don't usually see this from the players I see on the lifelong or monthly constructed rankings. It's a good card. There are a few things against it. It doesn't recycle is #1. Okay, it has breakthrough. It comes in as a 4/4, which means without boost, this still just trades with a demon token. So, whatever. So that's a quick little run through. I'm going to get going out of here. I wanted to put this out there just because the Zero War is something. It's a contextual metagame within an actual game itself. If you don't pay gold and you alter and you make the position swing from neutral to your side or from their side to neutral because of not using your gold, you force them to use gold to answer you. So some of these, so the metagame is like, I play Muse, and you go, okay, I play Wolf Spite. Well then, okay, if that's your second or third one, I'll play, Flash Fire or whatever, and we'll get into this fight about who has to spend their gold first, who has to play chicken. You'll hear me mention that in some of my deck techs and some of my playthroughs. this is what I'm talking about. This is just a quick run through, and I'm definitely going to be bringing this up in the podcast proper, so look forward to that. But at least now you have a visual on what we're talking about.